Okay, so somebody on Reddit earlier today asked if the Volca FM can make the same kind of range of sounds as the Volca Bass, or specifically, what type of bass sounds can the Volca FM make that are in the style of the Volca Bass or the Volca New Bass. And I don't have the new bass, so I can't comment on that, but I do have the original Volca Bass, and I have the FM, and they're some of my favorite instruments. And I thought I would just kind of show some actual sound demos of like the types of bass sounds you can get from these things. And also decided to throw the NTS-1 in the mix here. And I'm going to use this purely as a synth. It has amazing onboard effects, and the effects on the NTS-1 here would absolutely benefit all these other instruments as well. But in order to kind of make this a more head-to-head comparison, I'm going to not use them at all. So for the NTS-1, I'm going to treat it as if it were one of these other synths, just to create bass sounds, and that's it. So in some sense, the Volca Bass is always going to sound different purely because this is analog and these two are digital. And analog is always just going to have this kind of beefier, grittier, fuller sound that digital can kind of emulate sometimes, but it can't really create exactly. And so in that sense, yeah, the Volca Bass is always going to sound, or any analog synth is always going to sound a bit different. But I really think that both the NTS-1 and the Volca FM can hold their own as when used as a bass synth. They can both make really, really pleasant and full bass sounds. The NTS-1 overall is probably the thinnest of all of them. Like, it can't do the thickness or the fullness of sound that the other two can in quite the same way, but the range of sounds that it can make is probably the greatest, especially when you get into the user oscillators on this. It can really do a lot of different crazy stuff. The Volca FM also, for this I'm only using a single patch, this one called Plucky, which I really like for bass stuff, but there's I don't know, thousands of Volca FM patches out there that you can load on here, and I'm sure there's others that are even better for bass that I haven't discovered yet. There's so many out there. So that's really kind of the whole thing with the Volca FM is you really have to either get into making your own stuff, or really just comb through all the patches out there and kind of dig around and see if you can find something that really resonates with you, because there's so many sounds that this thing can make that are deep, they're complicated to create. And so if you want to just kind of dial in a really quick bass sound, probably you're going to want to use somebody else's patch for that, depending on what you're into. The Volca Bass, of course, subtractive synthesis is a lot simpler, and so just with the onboard controls here, you can just really quickly kind of dial in a sound that you want. But the range and the variation of that sound is a lot more limited. It's just the Volca Bass is always going to sound like the Volca Bass, kind of no matter what you do with it. There's certainly ways to tweak it, but it's got a very signature sound. Whereas these two, in kind of a blind test, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell what you're listening to or what instrument's making those sounds, because they can make such a huge range. All of these, I think, are really best paired with a sequencer. I'm using the key step for this example. NTS-1 doesn't have a sequencer built in. These two do have sequencers, but in my opinion, they're kind of limiting in terms of it's kind of the complexity of a sequence that you can make, and the length is the main thing for me. They're only 16 steps each. Key step can do up to 64, and I gotta say my favorite sequencer lately is the Model Samples, and this one's really great for these instruments because it's monophonic per track. These are all monophonic. Well, the way that I'm using the FM here is in unison mode, which is monophonic. So this is a really nice sequencer that can kind of do a lot more complex stuff. The key step is also good and cheaper, but less flexible. So the Volca Bass can actually do kind of an interesting thing with its sequencer. It has 3 oscillators, and you can actually sequence each of the 3 oscillators separately. Unfortunately, you can't do that over MIDI. You can only do that with the internal sequencer. So again, I'm going to kind of bypass that functionality just to make this a more fair comparison. So all of these are going to be in their unison mode, meaning that all the oscillators are playing one note simultaneously. And then the NTS-1 only has the one oscillator anyway, so there is no unison mode there really. So yeah, so I'm playing the same sequence on all of these, and I'm going to play them all individually. You'll probably get a little tired of the sequence, but I've just figured that's kind of the most fair way to do it, just to play the same notes over and over. And then you'll see I'll spend a little bit of time with each one, making just kind of playing with the sounds to give you an idea of the different range of things you can do with the various control parameters. Let's see, I think that's about it. So yeah, let's see how it goes.
you.